Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to reInvent. How many of you in the room is this their first reInvent? Raise your hands. Wow, wow, awesome. How about anyone attend more than 5 reInvents? A few of you. Any 8? All right, you don't count. All right, well, thank you very, very much for joining us here today. This breakout was really kind of as we began to think about what can we share with our partners that can help them through this well-architected journey. We began thinking about this in the context of you, in the context of what we've seen our partners do within this program. So we're really excited to spend the majority of the time really having our partners share their journey, their experience. And so with that, a little bit about the agenda. So we're going to spend a little time with you on what the program has done in 2019 and then where we're going in 2020. And then we're going to pass it off to our partners to share their stories. Share their stories around why well-architected, around what they're doing differently, how they're defining success. And again, as we begin to kind of look at this journey, it's going to give us an opportunity afterwards to ask questions. The people in the room are all partners at some point in their journey. So you will hear from partners that have been with the program longer than others. And so there's the opportunity for you to leave this session knowing, hey, here's what other partners are doing, here's how they're doing it, here's how they're defining success, right? So as we begin to kind of look at today, think about just asking your question, a question, and hopefully you'll get answers from these sessions around how are we defining success and how can we take what we heard today and apply it to our business. All right. In 2019, as we look at the program, we started here. Just remember the program was launched at reInvent last year. In 2020. What we saw, or in 2019, what we saw is partners did more than 2,020 reviews through the tool. Now, when we think about that, and to give you some context of that, that's about 30% of all the reviews that actually were done in the tool this year. So when we look at partners and the significance of this program, it's having a significant impact on our customers. Now, when we look at high-risk issues, what we saw across all of the reviews that were done was about 85% of those reviews had high-risk issues associated to them. The thing that I find very interesting is last year when we were running this as a pilot, it was more like 99%. Right? So you see a significant, as we look at the reviews, you see a significant drop in HRIs based on those workloads that customers are using partners to build. So again, that's very exciting to us. As we think about it in the context of well-architected and the well-architected framework to the well-architected tool, again, you're using this as a mechanism to teach, to measure, and to improve these workloads. Not just workloads that are existing, but new workloads. So the average conversion rate, this is an interesting number as well. The average conversion rate is 70%. So when we look at those 2,000 reviews, and when you hear the partners today talk about their experiences around conversion, our average is 70%. So I hear a lot of partners that aren't seeing that percentage. I'm seeing a lot of partners that are seeing a lot higher percentage. And so when we look at this, let's dive a little bit deeper as to how our partners really driving that HRI to improvement conversion. So today we have over 300 partners in the program. 300 partners. Last year, when we launched this, we had about 123. Now, out of that, we have about 134 authorized partners. And these are partners that are meeting the minimum requirements of the program. The majority of the partners today, as we kind of look back at that number, there's that delta. And that delta is that partners are still in that process of integrating Well-Architected into their business, right? So it does take time. And what we notice is the bigger your business, the longer time it takes to actually integrate. 2020. I'm really excited about 2020. 2020 is, as we begin to kind of look at what is changing, we've heard from you on things around the program and around the tool and around the architecture and well-architected lenses on things that we could do to make it better for you. How can we help you really drive and remove some of the heavy lifting today that it takes you to do these reviews? How do we drive that ongoing support? How do we drive you getting in front of that customer more often? And so you're going to see a big push around marketing. And from a marketing standpoint, as we begin to look at marketing, how many of you in the room had a customer come to you to have you do a well-architected review versus soliciting? Okay, a few of you, right? Last year, again, one of the challenges that we heard were customers just weren't aware of what well-architected is and that this program exists. So this year we did a handful of events that we really focused on well-architected in the program. At reInvent, one of the things that you'll see is well-architected everywhere you go. You're going to see them on buses. You're going to see them in our collateral. You're going to, it's in the elevator in the lobbies of the Venetian, where most of the executives are staying that are attending this. You're going to hear it in keynotes. You're going to hear it across other breakouts. We have a board game night. If you have nothing going on, I think it's Wednesday. Look at our board game night. Well-Architected is part of that. So we're gonna drive more awareness around what the program is, and it's going to be key to your success as well. As you begin to think about how do we educate more customers, how do we have these conversations around well-architected. So big focus on removing HRIs. So today our funding program is focused on improvements. And again, as we begin to think about improving these workloads, that's pre-production and in production. You're going to see our funding program move more towards helping customers in their production environments remove HRIs. We're also working with other funding teams across AWS to also leverage well-architected for migrations in other programs. So you'll see it more tightly aligned and integrated into these other funding programs. Well-architected POCs being established across every GEO. So as we begin to look at POCs, when we refer to POCs, those are points of contacts. We have partners now in every major GEO that AWS is in. So as you begin to listen to your customers and customers are hearing well-architected, it doesn't matter if they're somewhere in Argentina or somewhere in Singapore, across the globe, you now have well-architected partners. This idea around reducing the heavy lifting is critical for us. We need you to continue to tell us what we can do to help that review take less time and be more effective. We also want to hear from you around, from a remediation or an improvement standpoint, what we could be doing to help you also advance those engagements. Hands, I'd love to see a number of hands in the room that use well-architected lenses. Okay, a few of you. Really, really big focus for us this year is releasing more lenses. Today we have IoT, we have serverless, and we have HPC. You're going to see many more lenses get released, and we see that partners are leveraging leveraging these with their customers. So now I'm really excited to kick this off, because what we have is we have a partner of ours, Bella Fleur, that's going to come up and share with you their journey, their story. So, Tia, please.
All right, well, good morning. Thank you for having me. It's fantastic being here this year. Last year, I came to the Well-Architected Bootcamp, and this year I'm speaking, and hopefully you'll like our story and our journey and see yourselves in it. It's really been a very positive journey for us at Bella Fleur Technologies. So let's get right into it. All right, so for us, using the Well-Architected has really helped us to accelerate that journey of building trust with the customer right up front in the engagement. Even before the engagement begins, the question around, are you well-architected? And them saying, what is that? And then we're able to then have that conversation with them. And it's not just a technical conversation, but it helps to level set the business at the same time. Correct? Which is always sometimes maybe a challenge. Sometimes you're having a very technical conversation, and then it's very difficult then to have that conversation with the business, to get that fast yes and slow no, and to make sure that even before we start innovating and building this art of possible, are they on the same page as to where they are today? Where do their workloads stand today? Right? And answer a lot of those questions and take a lot of assumptions off of the table. We've been able to see that as well. So for us, we joined last June of 2018, so not quite all of 2019. It did take us some time to kind of level set even within our own business to find out how and where this would fit in our current process. So with our resources being thinly spread, we only had 2 pro cert essays that actually went to the boot camp to kind of try it out. So, okay, using those 2 pro certs, and then with all the other things that you have as a growing consulting firm, being able to move forward was a challenge initially. Positioning the value of WARS to customers was a challenge, because a lot of the conversations tended to be a lot more technical in aspect, and we still had not figured out from a business standpoint where exactly this fit in that conversation to really integrate that and make sure that everyone at the table was actually seeing benefit in the well-architected. So that was also a challenge. That was alleviated last year when I was able to actually join the bootcamp here at reInvent 2018. From a business perspective, I was then able to see through that workshop how exactly it was going to integrate into our program. And I immediately saw it, we were able to integrate it, and then from 2019, January till now, we were able to run with the program and continue to do so. So for us, other challenges we had were customer attrition. Our profit margins, were marginal, and we were really so focused, I think, on those portions of the business that it was difficult for us to see where well-architected was the main focus to put it into the business. But actually, you'll see in focusing on well-architected and putting it into our process, it actually fixed some of the other processes and things that we had initially in our process to try to address these issues. We also had a low conversion rate because, again, we were much more technically focused. And the well-architected helped us to raise the level of the conversation 10,000 feet, and we were able then to look at not just one problem or one technical issue, but then we were able to look at the business in whole and look at the health and wealth of it, and actually have speaking points to speak to each and every persona that was at the table, whether they from operations, in production, QA, it didn't matter. Whether they were a CEO or a CFO, we were able to make sure that everyone in the room was able to walk away with some sort of benefit in moving forward with projects. Our integration and approach. So after coming back from reInvent, we said, okay, let's start with some friendly customers that we know, right? 2 to 3 very friendly customers that we've had in our pipe for some time, where we can say, hey, would you like to have a well-architected review, and tell them the benefits of even doing the well-architected review. And they said yes, so that was awesome. So we were able to sit with them, actually, go through that whole process, and we were learning, right, on those first 3 customers. So that way we can then make sure we were much more efficient with customers we didn't know, did not have brand awareness with us, and didn't know us from any other consulting partner out there. We were able to map it to our current process, and where we put it was right in the front with discovery. We were already doing a complementary discovery process, but this helped us to take it to the next level. And we quickly saw that we were able to share more benefit in 2 to 4 hours than we were able to do even in weeks prior, with that being in the beginning of our process. We established KPIs to measure. We did just a couple, right? Let's see if we can shorten our window. That was always our thing. How do we shorten the sales engagement cycle to get from sales engagement pilot to production? How do we do that? And so those were some of the things that we looked at, what it was currently, and let's see with the well-architected, how can we trim and slim that down? We asked ourselves again, okay, how many of the workloads that we design, build, operate should be following best practices? And the answer is easy. It should be all of them, right? And we always had that as a part of our process. We would always go through the white papers. We would read them. We would give them to customers before the engagement. And of course, the customers don't have time to read those white papers. So the well-architected, I think, did a very good job of concentrating exactly into 43 some odd questions as to what it was that was really essential in being well-architected and communicating that in a very timely manner to the customer, right? It was much more efficient than we were able to do on our own with the white paper and even with the CAF white paper, okay? And it just helped us to also define pilot projects sooner, right? Because again, when everything is done in 2 to 4 hours and then within 5 days, you're able to really explain the entire process, you're able to get to their user stories. You're able to get to some of those workloads that they would have never told us about if we were just focused on the one thing they brought us in on. If they've just brought us in on a migration, they may not have told us they had a media department that needed Elemental. They may not have told us that they had a music division that also needed to have some of their files converted over. And they may not have told us about the 2 petabytes in the closet that's in a box that also needed to be uploaded, right? But we quickly saw we were having completely different engagement and conversations with customers than before using the well-architected, and it was a no-brainer for us that that was even a way that we were going to qualify customers. If customers didn't want the well-architected review, then they weren't our customer. That's how strongly we felt about the benefits that we saw up front. Okay. So one of the customers that we currently have, this is a very interesting story. This is a law firm that has decided they want to turn into a data company. So how do they do that? And they didn't quite have the resources on staff to actually take what they had and to really move it into the ways that they needed to from an innovation standpoint. And so they were looking for outside help, but they were looking for outside help in the way of staff augmentation. They thought, well, maybe if we just get 3 people that are AWS certified, maybe they can come in and just kind of advise us on what to do, and then we can do the rest. They already had a consulting firm that had been in there for 6 years and continues to be there. We work alongside their team. They actually were the first consulting firm to put this company onto the platform of AWS 6 years ago. They are not an AWS consulting firm. They're just a consulting firm that knew how to actually operate EC2 at that time and some of the other resources on AWS. So when we went in, they were like, well, we just need 1 or 2 resources. We just want to do staff augmentation. And so we asked them, what about well-architected? Would you allow us to do a well-architected review as a discovery to see where everything is? And so when we were able to do that, even the other consulting firm was like, wow, we all learned a whole lot. Maybe this is more than just staff augmentation. This is actually a project that we need to sit down and really map out. And so that has turned into a 9-month+ project where it just started with, oh, we just need you to do the networking and make sure that we're HIPAA compliant because we deal with medical records. But it's quickly turned into, oh, by the way, we're getting all these customers. We need you to help us to unload the data, do the whole data process, do the analytics, and now we're doing machine learning with them, and which was something that was not even in scope. It was completely from the beginning. They said it's out of scope. It's not even a conversation we're going to have. But through the well-architected, we were able to do that with them. We were able to also use the Well-Architected with them to align them to other service delivery programs that we're involved in that were also out of scope from the beginning of the conversation. So we were able to then do immersion days with them, to train their current team, to empower their current team, and to move them along as we're innovating. They're also able to understand and take on some of those things for themselves and understand how to automate what needs to be automated and what are some things that still need to be human in the loop, right? So it's really turned out to be fantastic. We were able to identify initially 30 high-risk indicators and 12 medium-risk indicators that they were not aware that they had. And these were very important because of the data that they're giving. They're actually giving it for class action lawsuits, right? And so they're trying to help lawyers to actually win in cases across the country, across North America. So this has been fantastic, and even as new resources have come out, you know, on AWS, even this year that were released at last reInvent and now are generally available, even in preview, we were able to introduce that to them and they were open to that discussion. So it's been fantastic. All right, the impact of Well-Architected, as you can see here for us, it really has helped us to really move forward beyond just having those initial conversations. It's really helped us to show benefit in a shorter period of time. It's helped us, even in the room, to differentiate among other consulting partners, whether they even already had a well-established relationship with the customer or not, even before we came. So that's how powerful that this has been, because we struggled with that prior to being a part of the Well-Architected program. And now we're able to be an ambassador, if you will, for the Well-Architected and say, hey, you know, to other consulting firms that may not be doing it, maybe you want to consider it as well, too, because of all of the benefit that we've been able to see. And sometimes we've displaced even another consulting partner because we were Well-Architected and because of what it brought. We were able to broaden the scope of the conversation, and the customer was able to benefit from that. Lessons learned. Probably before diving into this slide, I would say lessons learned here. If we were to do it over again, I would have started with our own workloads before going even to our friendliest customers and practice what we preach. We would have been Well-Architected before we stepped out. I'm not saying that we weren't, but the point is we would have learned a lot of the lessons in-house before even going to our friendliest customers, and then from there we would have gotten even more efficient at it, right, over time. So that's probably the number one thing if you are considering the Well-Architected program, and I hope you are. It's been fantastic for us, and I know with the improvements coming, it's just going to go to the next level. I'm excited about 2022, Dean. So I would say start with your own workloads, even if it's one workload, and build your team around that. And look at the questions. Again, they're a guide. Maybe you don't need all 43. Start to play with different workloads and see what works. Start playing with the lenses and see how they fit and overlay in that process as well, right? So the Well-Architected for us is, we've moved from sales to mentoring. And I think that was the biggest thing that helped us to really grow in our sales. It's not just being faster to market, it's how you're doing it, right? It's not what you say, but it's how you say it. We can give everybody in here a sales script, and the way that you deliver it may be the way that you'll be successful over another partner, potentially. So I think the Well-Architected gives you to not just the what you say, but it's the how you say it to the customer. We're able to mentor them. They're looking at us, as a thought leader. Now, when we have these engagements in a very short period of time. And so even the customers that don't go with us, they still give us customer satisfaction surveys, which I think is fantastic, not necessarily from a Well-Architected standpoint, but on our partner finder page, because it drove so much benefit in a short period of time that I thought that was fantastic, because we kind of struggle with that too. And that's definitely something you have to check off as a box, right, on your consulting page, right? Being partners with AWS. So although it doesn't seem like a big thing, that is a big thing, because customers were telling us, hey, this is fantastic. We're not going with you because of these other reasons, but it had nothing to do with that. And now we have a blueprint and we know which direction to go, and we're very thankful. So that was pretty cool. So we knew we were on the right path, and we plan to do even more in 2020. So again, it's just helped us to move forward in all aspects with the customer. It's helped us to broaden and the scope of projects, to really look at the solutions from end to end and not just come in and focus on one area, right? So I hope that you enjoyed hearing our journey on Well-Architected, and I'm available for questions. If not today, even after today, just reach out. Thank you very much.
So one of the things that we do is as we look across the ecosystem, we are identifying patterns and trends. And one of the reasons why we asked Tia and Bella Fleur to come up and talk about Well-Architected is Bella Fleur has done over 100 Well-Architected reviews this year. You think about it in the context of your business, right? You think about it from the context of how big your business is. They've been able to integrate this into their business. They've been able to scale it and support that many customers and address that many high-risk issues and remove those high-risk issues. But the benefit, as you heard from Bella Fleur, is that, again, it's that customer journey. Their sale from reducing the sales cycle, their sales cycle by 50%. I mean, that's amazing. And when you begin to look at the bigger picture and where Well-Architected is going and it being integrated into their business, so it's just, again, it's part of the fabric. So with that said, we've got another partner here, Hoon Park from Bespen from Korea. Thank you.
Good morning. So I'm Hoon Park from Bespen Global, and I'm the co-founder and CSO of Bespen Global. And I'm happy to be here to share our experience with a well-architected review in Korea. But before I start talking about war, let me talk about Bespen Global a bit and also about Korea, because I presume that a lot of you probably are not familiar with the cloud industry in Korea or in Asia. So before I start, our mission is, when we started 4 years ago, so a 4-year-old company, is we had a grand vision, which was we want to create the world's most automated cloud management company, and so that every enterprise can leverage the power of cloud IT. So whatever we do, we are trying to automate, and whatever we do is about cloud IT, and our aspiration is to become the leading cloud MSP in Asia, even though we're only 4 years old. So what have we achieved over the last 4 years? We actually have grown to a company of 850 cloud experts in Korea, China, and now also in Dubai. We have offices in Korea, in Seoul, in China, in Shanghai, in Beijing, and also in Dubai now. And we have strategic partners in North America and also in Europe. And we also were recognized by Gartner as one of the up-and-coming cloud MSPs. We've been in their MQ report for the last 3 years. And what makes us a bit unique from other cloud MSPs is that from day one, we didn't only just focus on services, but also on developing our own software, a cloud management platform called OpsNow. And OpsNow very much integrates with our cloud MSP services as well. It does basic, I shouldn't say it here, but multi-cloud management, and also cost optimization. And we just also released a governance module. And I mention this because it's actually relevant for our well-architected review and how we integrate it in our cloud MSP. I'll talk about it later on when I talk about our use case. And you might be wondering how we could grow this fast. So one of our key success factors is that from day one, we looked for outside funding and raised over $100 million. So anybody who wants to grow fast, make sure you have strong backing. So this is our war team. I wanted to show you the picture of the two people. We only have 2 people at the moment to really show you who's doing the well-architected review in our company, because it's not me. I'm just the chief strategy officer. I just tell them, okay, let's do this. But the ones who actually do it are Kunu and Jongim. So Kunu is one of our top cloud experts. He has more than 50 years of IT experience, last 10 years in cloud, and he's been with us since the first year. And his experience spans from cloud migration to cloud strategy and cost optimization. He even published 2 books actually in Korea about cloud. And he's seconded by Jongim. She is a professional. She has a professional SA certificate and also 7 years of DevOps experience, and joined us from Accenture. So we started WAR almost exactly a year ago, and we've done 20 WAR reviews. I thought it was a lot, but I just heard the company has done hundreds plus, so I guess there's a long way to go. And this year we did 16. The good news is that our customers were, pretty much all of them were satisfied. They told us afterwards they saw a value add, and they very much liked it. The challenge we are facing is that our conversion rate is only 25%. So we're still trying to figure out how to convert it, and yeah, I'm curious to learn more about that later on as well. How did we integrate WAR? So what we did in the beginning was we targeted our startup and SMB segments. To put it in context, we actually cover everything from startups and SMBs to large enterprises. Actually, the reason why we have 850 people is because our key accounts are like Samsung, LG, and big MNCs. And we do a lot of migration work for them, and that means that typically there are like 10, 20 people going to one project. But we figured that we wanted to try WAR on the startups and SMBs first, because these large enterprise customers didn't see the immediate benefit of WAR, or we thought at least that they wouldn't see it. For startups, we offered the full WAR review and also included organization and operation review because they're startups. And for SMBs, it was more trying to figure out how we can upsell to them, encourage them to use more of our cloud MSP services. And lastly, we actually customized WAR. We didn't use the textbook WAR approach in the beginning. We streamlined it a bit, simplified it to integrate into our existing cloud MSP services. But over time, we also realized that actually the whole framework makes a lot of sense. So these days, we're actually offering the whole framework to our customers. So let me talk about a specific use case. It's called A. Actually, I just met the company again before I came here, and they allowed us to use their name. So they're called TripStore. TripStore is one of the fastest growing online travel agencies in Korea. They became our customer about a year ago, and initially we just did AWS reselling. They didn't use our MSP, just wanted to use AWS. And they didn't use that much cloud either. By our standards, a very small account, $5,000 monthly consumption. But then our AM noticed that the consumption increased within 3-4 months to 20,000. And they're wondering why. So in order to have a talking point, they actually went in with our WAR team. And initially, the customer didn't see much benefit in the WAR program because they're all developers, and they said, oh, we know as much about cloud and about infrastructure as you guys do, if not more. But when we told them that we would offer it almost for free, at least the first part, they said, okay, and let's give it a try. And we did it for 3 weeks. So Kunu went in there for 3 weeks. And well, he revealed that they had 22 high-risk issues and 7 medium-risk issues. And yeah, the customer was also very surprised about it. And they acknowledged the fact that they actually had poor cloud architecture. They acknowledged the fact that as developers, they know a lot about developing apps, but their understanding of cloud infrastructure is actually limited, much more limited than they thought. And so we came up with all these remediation points for short-term, mid-term, and long-term remediation. And they agreed to do some short-term remediation services with us, which we implemented. Unfortunately, they did not sign up for the mid-term remediation services, meaning helping them with what's actually relevant, like implementing the real guidelines and understanding the policies around security, data protection, and IDS and backup. And of course, they also didn't buy into our MSP services, which is our ultimate goal. So we had a highly satisfied customer who was spending more on AWS now, but we didn't generate revenue. And that's a typical story for us. And I'm sharing this with you just to show you that, yes, we have done a lot of reviews, but we haven't figured out yet how to generate more revenue. And yeah, I also told Tim I wanted to be honest about it here, that we are facing these challenges. Interestingly, I met the customer, as I said before, just last week again to get an update. And they admitted that they actually have trouble implementing the policies. And they also understand that even though we provided a detailed report, it's difficult for them to implement all the ideas. So hopefully they're going to sign up for a second war review, actually. Our salespeople are talking to them right now. And also it actually it gave me some ideas on how to better sell the war review in the future. And I can talk about that on the next slide. So as I said, the key challenge for us was also setting up a dedicated war team, just as Tia said. We decided to assign our most experienced expert on it because he liked it himself. He himself was actually a champion of the war review. And, but the problem is that he was wearing several hats. So he's doing this, but he's also doing a lot of migration projects, actually. So to be honest, we have one dedicated full-time person, and the other one is more or less guiding the team. And the second challenge was also to find a champion on the sales side. The issue we had in the beginning was we had the war team in place, and they were soliciting customers directly. And they're not very successful, actually. And for the first 3 months, it was just lingering a bit, and we're trying to figure out a solution. And then eventually found a sales leader, actually the head of our startup and we call it Jump Up team, who saw an opportunity in approaching existing customers and starting a conversation. So once we had a sales champion, we suddenly, it picked up, and that's why we have 20 war reviews now. But the challenge remains that the remediation rate is low, and as I said before, we are still trying to figure out how to how to sell MSP services. So what are our lessons learned? Number one, what we are trying to do going forward is we're trying to automate the war review. And at the moment, it takes about 3 weeks for us. And the challenge is that both the war team members are actually quite senior. And what we're trying to do is actually automate it so that we can also assign more junior people to it. And to do that, we're doing 2 things. One is integrated with our Ops Now software, the cloud management platform I mentioned before, because the Ops Now management platform also has a cost optimization tool. So we look at existing customers, look at the way they use cloud, and when we see an opportunity for them to optimize the cost, then we send our war team in. The second one is, as I said, we just released a governance module. And our war team actually approached our developers, our software team, and said, hey, if you actually make a few adjustments and allow us to configure it for war, then we can actually also automate the review process, and eventually maybe even automate part of the reporting, because the reports are part of it, as you might know, of the war report. The war review is a part of the report is actually quite, I wouldn't say generic, but almost standardized. And then on top of that, you have some deeper insights. So what we're trying to do is automate a part of the report and then have an add-on which then can be written by the more experienced cloud experts. And the other one is we're also trying to share insights with other well-architected review partners, because what our customers told us is they'd be very much interested to hear what kind of feedback we gave to other customers who are in a similar industry or have a similar architecture. So I think it would be very interesting for us to have access to those 2,000 other reviews, for instance. Not, full access, but maybe identify some trends or patterns across similar architectures or industries. And the other one is that we are trying to also target a new customer segment now. Instead of just targeting startups and SMBs, we're also trying to apply it to emerging enterprises. So maybe the use case that Tia mentioned before, I don't know how big that company is, but it seems to me that might also fall into that larger category. And I'd be curious to hear also how you do that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. And yeah, I'll be more than happy to also answer questions later on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. So as we look at the number of reviews, right, and as you begin to hear stories of partners doing more reviews, don't let the number of reviews fool you in the sense of, wow, yes, 100 is knocking it out of the park, right? But the fact that we've just actually launched this program in APAC, right? So as we begin to kind of look at that journey, your journey is definitely, this is intentional of why we brought the different partners that we brought in to talk to you today, to hear really kind of where they are. Because again, very similar stories, right, of lessons learned and how do we address it. And so we're gonna get an opportunity here in a little bit to dive a lot deeper into the how, right? So we're gonna have the panel up here and we're gonna be able to, and we've got people also within the audience that are partners that have been around for a while that have a lot of really good feedback and answers to questions. So we're gonna pull the entire audience, so that should be fun. All right, our next speaker is DynoCloud and Franco. A little bit of background. You guys were onboarded early this year, right? Or actually mid-year, right? Yeah, in June. And so newer partner, but a partner that actually really had the right executive level sponsorship and integrated it into their business very quickly. And so I'll pass it to you and allow you to share the story.
Okay, welcome everybody to this awesome event about well-architected lessons learned. Hope you can get some conclusions on what I'm going to talk. Thank you very much, the well-architected team, for the opportunity. I'm pretty glad to be here. I'm Franco, I'm CEO of DynoCloud, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we integrated the program, the results we have, and the reality that as a specific region and a really special region in the world that is Latin America related to technology, adopted this program to their businesses. So, first of all, I wanted to summarize Latin America in one picture. Perhaps in your mind you see, hey, Latin America, dancing, having some drinks, really fun people. So yes, in fact, it's really true that we're people that we really like to hang out. If you want to make business with me, please invite me a beer and we can talk about that later. But one key point here and why I'm pointing on this is we are people that we really value the personal relationships. Yeah, we really value the trust. We're people that value a lot about, hey, let's have the meeting in person and now do a call. Come here, let's grab, let's have dinner, let's talk about business, meet my company, I want you to meet the guys. We're people that we really value that. And I'm going to come back to this point about how we integrated the program into this reality. Our headquarters are in Córdoba. This is an amazing picture of my city, the city that I was born. It's a really interesting city in Argentina. It's the second biggest city after Buenos Aires, that perhaps is the city that you know. It's amazing because it has a lot of universities, a lot of talents. We merge a lot of talents from the universities, so we try to empower and create the talent from there. And my company, that is called DynoCloud. After that, I'm going to tell you about the name. But that is a picture of us 6 months ago when we became authorized well-architected partner. We were around 13 people. Now we're 25. We have our headquarters in Córdoba. We also have offices in Buenos Aires. And nowadays, we're opening a new site in Bogota, trying to conquer the region. So we were born in Argentina. We were born as a cloud consulting company. That is the only service that we provide. We are focused on being the best on cloud consulting, cloud optimizations, cloud adoption, cloud migration, DevOps services. Yeah, that is mainly our focus. We were created by millennials. We didn't have investment. We didn't have contacts. We were just a bunch of guys that they say, hey, I have this knowledge, and let's create a company and take advantage of that. So we're a company that moved really faster. We learn all the time. We were trying to be the best because we are not a company like that can put 100 people to a client from one day to another. So we try to be the best and have that key differentiation, yeah, the quality of our services. AWS Partners in 2017, and as Dean says, authorized Well-Architected Partners since June this year. Okay, moving on to the challenges before Well-Architected. Well, we were a company that was started from scratch, as I told you, so we have a lot of challenge of converting leads into opportunities. In Latin America, in general, we have the role of educators and teachers because they value a lot the thing that they are far away from where tech happens, yeah? So they value a lot the partner that comes and tell the story of what is happening in the world and try to integrate into their region. So the fact that they are far away and they needed this partner, it was really hard to us to convert this list into opportunities because we needed first to teach them which is the need, which is the gap, and after teaching the gap, we needed to sell our services. So it was a really huge challenge. That is a challenge that we nowadays all of us has, but we're trying to use the program to work on this. We didn't have standard processes internally. We have some clients that we have a lot of data lakes from one side. We have a fintech company from one side. We have MSP from the side. You say, hey, I don't have a standard process to work on all of these verticals. Let's try to define something. As I told you, our quality was our key difference, is our key differentiation. So keeping that in scale is a really huge challenge for our companies. And as I told you, different roadmap definitions regarding the architect involved in the commercial processes. So, okay, we went to Buenos Aires to the bootcamp. We meet Dean, we meet Maria. It was awesome. Yeah, let's do Well-Architected. So we have some challenges integrating this program into our company. First, the lack of knowledge of people in the company. So we need to empower people to train this because there was a lot of pillars and a lot of papers and a lot of information. Say, oh gosh, how are we going to do this? So the lack of knowledge was the first thing to attack. And we tried to make, okay, let's create a single team with the 2 guys that went to the bootcamp and some other engineers to start making the knowledge transfer to the new ones. And let's start with small projects, okay? So projects that we can control and say, let's see what happens with this. Externally, a lot of things. Client sponsorship to make the review, the renovation after the first remediation process, educate about the cloud first and DevOps approach. The same challenges that we had before, we had it in the Well-Architected. But now we have a tool, right? We have a tool to start exploring that. We have a lot of lift and shifted workloads. In Latin America, it's pretty common to say, hey, I'm in the cloud. I'm a cloud-first company. And you enter to the council and you say, no, you have one virtual machine, and that's it, and you are not a cloud-first company. Let me know. And innovation. Education comes with innovation, right? But if we don't have education about what's happening around the world and how can we address that, it's pretty hard to get innovation into companies. So after meeting with Dean and whatever, I meet my business development director and say, hey, man, we need to do this. It's a really huge opportunity for us to start solving these challenges. So let's see how can we address in a region that first we need to educate and then we have to sell, okay? He told me, okay, I got it. The first thing that we need to do is we're not going to bill for the review. Let's make it free because we needed to get that meeting of 3-4 hours where we can talk about everything. We're not going to talk only about business, Well-Architected. We're going to talk about everything. We're going to gain the relationship of the client. We're going to gain the trust on that very first meeting. Remember that I told you that Latin America value a lot of that. So we travel a lot. We went to Chile. We went to Uruguay. We invest a lot of commercial processes because we thought that the revenue doesn't come with the review. So the review is not a part of our services. The review is part of our commercial process. Okay? The review is part of getting to the client, getting that meeting and say, hey, man, look all of the things that you can be doing and you are not doing. Look at your business objectives and say, I have the solution. Let's start making some remediation here, and you will be relaxed that you can meet your business objectives. So after the first review, all the clients were mind blown and say, hey, man, this is awesome. Where were you guys all the time? So After that first review meeting, when we not only talk about well-architected, but we talk about soccer, politics, beer, whatever, we get that relationship and say, OK, let's start working together. Yeah? The other things that we thought with my business director was, let's start with a small statement of work, 2 or 3 months. They needed to value us. They need to see the quality of our services. As I told you, that is our key advantage, but I cannot prove until I work with them. So let's start really small. Let's make a first remediation process with really huge risks and start working with them. Also, we added a second add-on document. That is a really interesting thing. We all use only the AWS document from the tool, but we also create one from us with all the risks and tasks that we will be doing if we were the CEOs or the head of development of the company. So we put on the shoes of our client and say, hey, man, look, you have all of these risks that the document of AWS told you, but if I were you, I would start from this side. I would start with this in the short term. Okay? I would start from this part. Regarding your priority, you told me you're going to open operations in another country. OK, let's go with this. Let's face scalability. Let's face availability. So we try to make that role of being a partner, a technical partner on that. And we created a referral program. And this is pretty interesting for commercial. Yeah? It was a thing that having a couple of beers in WeWork in Buenos Aires with my co-founder, I say, let's tell the client that if they get a review from other clients, they will get some of the credits of MDF that we have. So let's make them our fans club. They can sell well-architected from us. So our clients converted in sellers. So it was awesome. So our clients started saying, hey, I have a friend, I have a company that is on AWS, that it will be awesome to make a well-architected review to them. So they get the phone call, we made the review, and they get the MDF credits on demand generation for us. So it was a really awesome selling strategy for us. OK, summarizing the engagement process. So we have our first contact, phone calls, email, LinkedIn. We have a lot of marketing agencies doing this for us. And we tell you have to say that we are authorized partners, that we can represent AWS because we're authorized partners, that we are the first in LATAM. Woohoo, yeah. Now we are. And that the review is free. So the first decision that they need to make is no money involved. So, OK, come. Yes, I have 3 hours. Come here and tell me what you need to tell me. So we made the review. As I told you, it's our time. We are the guys there. We talk about everything, and we have 4 hours to seduce the client professionally to get working with DynoCloud, okay? To get working with us. After that, we come back to offices and start preparing our document, generating all the risks, all the tasks that we will be doing, and the first remediation proposal. 2 or 3 months, no more than that. We need the client to engage the remediation process, okay? Then we make the risk presentation meeting, most of the time in person. Sometimes it's a lot of investment to come back and make a risk presentation in person. We try to do it most of the time. And after that, we have our kickoff meeting. And then we involve managers, project leaders, architects, architect engineers, whatever. So up to the 4th stage, the client didn't invest anything. And they get all the information they need to start working. So we take a risk on that? Perhaps, yeah, of course. But in the well-architected review, they show that, no, man, this is a lot. I cannot address this internally. I need something that at least can tell me how to do it. Not only do it, but how to do it. I need a technical partner on this. We focus a lot of time on medium-sized companies that are growing up, and they want to focus on their product. They have their engineers, they have the architects, but they want to focus on gain money and make a huge and amazing product. So say, OK, I can give you the disaster recovery process. I can give you this, that. And we will also get the first statement of work on that. Yeah? So we get the technical partnerships that we are pursuing with this. On our operational approach, after meeting my business development director, he started selling, blah, 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 blah. We started creating and talking with my COO about how we're going to address this internally. Oh, this was a really huge challenge, too. So he told me, OK, let's create a dedicated team, right? Scrum team with a mix of Scrum and Kanban. And let's see what happens. You and me will going to be in the team, trying to make the knowledge transfer in the very beginning, and we were starting to involve some other engineers. So we started creating a team that received a lot of remediation processes at the same time, so they have to manage priorities. They have to try to get the happiness of the clients, of all the clients at the same time, and that team can scale controllably on all the time. Yeah. So if a new member comes to DynoCloud and say, okay, hey, I'm here to learn a lot about cloud, they will join this team, and the team is already working, and it's self-organized, and they have all the technical knowledge that they think. So it's pretty easy for us to onboard new members on the company right now. We create reusable content to get some productivity, and we get domain expertise. So when we have a risk in one client and we need to do it in another one, it's pretty easy for us to make the match and try to get it solved. And each time is quicker. Yeah, it's more quick. So we get some productivity on the same team, and we don't have to scale linearly with the clients. We get a team that is high productively making remediations. So we have our well-architected clients, all of them happy, obviously, because they're working with us. Each of them have their status board. Of course, we will have a consolidated board on our remediation team, and our remediation team is responsible for managing, as I told you, all the tasks, the status that is blocked or not, and all the boards are synchronized, and our clients are seeing their status all the time. Well, Cytex is one of our success cases. It's a really interesting success case. They were a startup created by 2 or 3 telecommunications engineers, and they are a software as a service project management tool focused on telecommunications companies, carriers, whatever. When we met them, I'm going to put the quote because it's really large and you can read it in the same time that I talk. In the time when we met them, they told us, yes, we were using AWS, but really, we just recently signed a contract with the biggest carrier in Argentina, and we don't know what will happen with that. I don't know what will happen. I don't know if we're going to explode. I want to make my business grow, and I cannot lose this opportunity because it's the moment that the company needs Cytex. Say, okay, great. Well, let me do you a well-architected review and see what can we do in 3 months. So we made the well-architected review. We found, well, you know, an EC2 instance full of Docker containers inside, and you say, oh, man, no, this is going to explode sometime. In only 3 months, we went to an architecture that was able to scale. It has continuous improvement, continuous delivery, it has infrastructure as a code, or all the things that we are now in only 3 months. And in 3 months, they get the client, and now they're a company that is rocking in Latin America regarding telecommunications software. And we get this, yeah, this quote. And when I read it, I say, man, I didn't know that we were so valuable. So this is the technical leader, Juan Alvarez, that I met at that moment. And I told you, hey, I need you to just rate this partner, go to this link. I need it for my partner level in AWS. I say, okay, I will do it. And he wrote this, and I say, oh, man, wow, this is awesome, man. So it was really, I was really happy when I read this quote. I say, man, we really changed, we really saved this company, I mean. Because I don't know if they will be able to face that challenge in that time frame, and if they will be able to get that client working well. So that was amazing, really. Some of the impact, 3 basic metrics about us. On active projects, we really increased with these free reviews and in-person reviews and referral program and all of these commercial tools that we created to sell well-architected. We really increased the kind of projects on our service. What you see in red is are the projects of well-architected and how it changed the company. Regarding revenue, you can see the tendency, how it took off after having the program involved on our company. And we have free reviews. So it's really interesting to say, hey, our selling moment was on the well-architected review. That was mainly the conclusion here. On staff people, I'm here in 2016 only sending emails in a co-working, and now we created. We really took off after having this program, so we're really, really happy how it went on this year, and the program was a really interesting tool for us on that. On qualitative impact, nowadays, as I told you, we didn't have the standard processes. We didn't have a control on how to scale. And nowadays, what this program gave us is, first of all, quality control. Now we have a baseline of quality to work on. When some people get into DynoCloud, they have to do, obviously, the accreditations, business, technical, TCO, and also have to make a training of well-architected, because they will be working in a company that is a well-architected company. So we were using this as a baseline of our services. Now we have a team that made us easy to scale, because people onboard the team is working, and they have self-organized methodology, and they have really great technical knowledge, so they share a lot about how they develop the solutions for our clients. And the last point is really interesting. After having the well-architected program, we applied for the DevOps competency program. We said, hey, we need 4 use cases, okay? And 3 of the 4 use cases were part of the remediation team. And we didn't have to change anything about what we did to apply for the checklist of DevOps competency. It was really interesting because, yes, we did this, yes, we did this, yes, yes, oh, okay, oh, sort of, but yes. And the well-architected serve us as a foundation for other competencies and programs. And after DevOps, we're going to take financial services. And I read the checklist, and this is well-architected. Yeah, so reliability, you have security. So this program gives you all the use cases you need to apply for all the other programs. So it's a really, really interesting foundation for that. And the only use cases that wasn't so good was the one that wasn't outside this program. So to get the conclusion and saying, hey, what I need you guys to take from this as a lesson, obviously, each region is a world. I'm not telling you, hey, you have to give the reviews as a gift. I'm telling you that in Latin America, we had that gap of education in general. So this served us as an education tool. This served us as a trusting tool. Hey, man, I'm traveling for you. I'm here. I'm investing in you because I want you to get into this, really. And the return of investment is immediately. Yeah, our revenue comes with the remediation processes. All of our clients, after having their first SOW of 3 months, they get the renovation, all of them. We have 100% of conversion rate from their first remediation to the second contract, that then you have 6 months, 1 year, and whatever the client takes. Developing in-person reviews changed the game on our region again. I hope you can take that and say, OK, may apply on us too. The fact of educate, as I told you. And the last thing I want to tell you is the program is a really amazing tool. I think it really changed our company, and it solved a lot of the challenges that we had. But the fact that getting the reality of the region and say, OK, this is how we are going to adapt it to our reality is what makes the difference. Okay? I'm not going to tell you that this will apply in all the regions that you guys are, but I'm going to tell you that we need to think about how the program matches, and we try to think a little bit commercially, operationally, technically, how this will apply. Thank you very much. I will be all the week in Raymond. So
Thank you, Franco.
Let's meet together.
So I love the story. So when we're in Argentina, after the boot camp, we sit down and we talk about what the different qualifications are of the program. Franco had a goal, was he was going to actually become an authorized partner within 30 days. And you guys did that, right? I mean, you guys, and the other thing that I think is really unique here is they didn't look at it just from the standpoint of, let's just train 2 people and let's just do the minimum requirement. They actually sought out to look at, how do we train and enable our entire company? Right, so yes, you know, one of the requirements is that for a customer-led, well-architected review, you should have an SA Pro Cert that goes and gets training. That didn't matter to them. They wanted to make sure that everyone in their company was trained on well-architected. And so when we look at the trends and we look at the partners that today are in the program, the partners that have been most successful are those that actually have integrated this into their QA process, into their pre-sales process, post-sales process, right? So as you begin to kind of think about that story, it's a great example of how a partner took this and the impact that it's having on their business. So next up we have John, and John's going to share. John is going to share a little bit about Well-Architected from his journey standpoint. One of the things that we ended up doing here early on was the two GEOs we launched were North America and EMEA. And John has been pivotal across EMEA in building his well-architected business. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So how many of you have traveled from outside of the US to get here today? Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the hell time it is in your time zone. And also, those of you who, this is your first reInvent, how many of you are new to Vegas today? Is this your first time in Vegas as well? Sorry, Hollywood has lied to you. It is nothing like the movies. It's the worst place in America. But we're here for reInvent, and that's positive. So I'm the final partner speaking today, which I guess means I'm headlining. So sorry for those of you who were expecting Celine Dion or those blue guys, whatever they're called. I'm going to go straight into our sort of initial challenges of our journey. We joined the program in April 2018. As Dean said, we were sort of EMEA was one of the early regions, and we were invited to participate by our partner development manager and partner account manager at the time. And it looked like a good opportunity for us, and we got pretty much stuck into it. Back in those days, the tool that you all see now in the console with the nice check boxes and the links to videos and stuff was a horrifying Excel spreadsheet that we had to use. So we've worked with that so that you don't have to. It's now a much cleaner experience. So we found that aside from terrible Excel spreadsheets aside, the main challenges were that we found the review process quite time-consuming, or rather the follow-up process was quite time-consuming. We initially found that we were writing really detailed reports off the back of the reviews because we felt that's where the value was, and the sort of the administrative overhead of communicating with the program and everything was kind of high because there was a lot of email involved. There was no real sort of Salesforce-based processes at that point. That's all improved. So we were firmly of the opinion that the value of the review was in the follow-up and the artifact that we generated as a result of that. And I think that's probably wrong. That was the wrong approach. Really, the value is in the review process itself. It's the conversations, the face-to-face time that you have with the clients. There are sort of 21, 22 of us, so we're a similar size to Franco's business, and I think we've approached it in much the same way, embedded it very much into the way we do things. The other challenge, I think, was that the credits program, although really good for sort of sweetening the deal and dangling a carrot in front of the client and having them sort of go for it, it sort of anchors the price conversation. Is everyone familiar with the term of price anchoring? You'll have seen this any time you've bought anything. When you buy Splunk, for example, and the Splunk guy shows up with a suit and puts a big number with lots of zeros in front of you, that's the price anchor. He's hoping that you'll think of that as really expensive so that when he gives you a number with a slightly smaller number of zeros on it, that feels cheap. It's not. Splunk is horrifyingly expensive still. The problem that we found with the sales process following our well-architected reviews was that customers were looking at that $5,000 and thinking, oh, what can we get for that? And so if we were to follow up with a sales pitch that says, actually, here's a load of work you need doing, and it's going to be $25,000, well, pounds, actually. It's about 1-to-1 at the moment, which is awful. Then that seemed expensive to the client. And so we've had to kind of change the way we talk about the credit program in order to kind of get them away from thinking about it as a $5,000 amount of money. We didn't pitch the remediation work particularly well first out the gate. I think we were a little focused on the too big a picture. We were working on the assumption that the client was going to work with us for a long period of time, and so this first sort of step on the road is kind of something that we choose as a small piece of work that we could get done without having to touch too much of their business logic or understand too much of their platform. And so some of the recommendations we were making were things like creating organizations layouts and multiple accounts and sort of solving some of the security problems that way. The problem with that is that if that's all the clients bought, there is no value in that to them. All they do then is they have a number of other accounts to look at, and none of their workloads is in it. And so we learned pretty quickly that we needed to change what we were delivering. Even the client was thinking only about a small piece of remediation work. We were suggesting that they take on something that at least had some value to them, rather than just being a technically pure correct thing to do. And I think that speaks to an extent to the distinction between Well-Architected as a review program for a pre-sales consultancy engagement rather than by a technical engagement. And so the people who were doing the reviews and running the work on our team started to see this stuff more as a non-technical piece of work. And actually, I think that for some of the people on the team, they were uncomfortable with the idea that this was not technical. I mean, it is technical because you're talking a lot about the platform, but it's not sort of hands-on engineering work. And that, I think, is an emotional boundary to cross for a team that was primarily at that time working very hands-on with customers rather than a consultatory fashion. And we've adapted our business over the last year or so so that more of the team are doing things that look more like consultancy than engineering. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. We also had early on a couple of pieces of misunderstanding about how the credit program worked. So some customers were under the impression that they were getting cash for it. Some people were under the impression that the $5,000 credits came straight to us. And so because they are taking credits from AWS and therefore not paying in cash, if their Amazon bill was lower than $5,000 a month, then there's a cash flow impact to them to sort of take on those credits over the period of time that they're using the platform. And for the smaller customers, that caused a little bit of a headache, and it upset at least one client who was quite put out by the fact that he was having to pay us for the remediation work when what he thought he was getting was free consultancy. So our initial successes, so we're based in London. Most of our clients are in London. Franco mentioned like traveling to Uruguay to go and run reviews. Like we get annoyed if we have to go to Zone 3 on the tube, never mind getting on a plane. But I network quite a lot in the city anyway. I've got sort of mailing lists and social groups with quite a lot of CTOs, CEOs, mostly in the sort of small business, small medium business area. Some of those have kind of gone on to work for larger organizations, but I'm quite well connected to people who could, in theory, buy services from us, but to that point hadn't. And the initial success that we found was that I had this existing network, and so to say, hey, would you like $5,000 of free Scale Factory consultancy to a bunch of people I already knew was quite a good opener. And so we picked up quite a lot of work early on doing that. And the credit funding really was the thing that took the risk out of that engagement. So whilst I've mentioned that it has challenges around price anchoring and the mechanics of how the credits work, being able to engage us on a no-risk basis, other than the time that it's taken, was the thing that's really driven a lot of those sales conversations, which is pretty great. One other kind of aspect of this is that because this is an official Amazon framework, there's something about that carries a little more weight than just saying, hey, John's going to come and tell you what you're doing badly on your platform. The fact that those two things are more or less the same doesn't seem to make any difference. Being able to say, Amazon think you should be doing this rather than John thinks you should be doing this is a sort of strong position. We've also found that although initially some of the team thought of this work as non-technical work, the brighter and more kind of engaged people in the business became aware or realized that there was a lot of value in this process, a lot of value to the company, and therefore if they were able to pitch in and do some of this stuff themselves, they would be more valuable to the business. And so a lot of the team have gone and done their professional SA certs and asked for the opportunities to go out and run some of these reviews on our behalf because they see that value. And so we've sort of, in about a year's time, we went from, oh, this is non-technical work, why do I have to go and do that? Why do I have to go to Zone 3? To, I'd like to do this. This is important, valuable work, and this is something that I feel is important and should be doing, which is partly down to kind of how I've set the expectations in the business, but also down to individuals and their kind of interest in bettering themselves in the pursuit of their technical expertise. The other thing that we did fairly early on was clarify what was meant by workload, and I think this is something that's still not massively clear in the paperwork for Well-Architected, but the idea that you can run reviews for more than one workload for a single client was something that we came to reasonably early on. Many businesses, as well as having the platform that runs their web applications, will have some kind of BI and analytics stuff on the side. Those two things have very different business outcomes, and so those are considered two separate workloads, which means that your credit application for funding is, you can do that on both workloads. So you've actually then unlocked $10,000 for the client. You can do a bit more sort of stuff for them. And doing that and sort of making that mental leap meant that with a number of customers, we were able to go back and say, hey, in the last 6 months we did a well-architected review with you. We actually think that we can do more of those things if you'd like to engage us further. And in some of those cases, those have turned into bigger pieces of work as a result of that secondary engagement, which was pretty useful. The way we integrated this into the business was that we talked to our existing network, so the people that I was already networking with. I basically dropped a few emails around. We mentioned it at some of the sales events that we run, and also went to our existing customer base. So we've been in business for about 11 years at this point. So there were a number of people that we had already worked with who were likely to benefit from the review and also the funding opportunities. Doing it with existing customers was slightly interesting from I guess, an emotional perspective, because in many cases we were reviewing our own historical work against the well-architected standard. So you're kind of going into a customer and saying, hey, can we review the work that we've done for you? Oh, you've missed all these things. It's a bit of a sort of strange position to be in, but you can get around that with the right amount of sales conversation. We've now integrated well-architected to the point where almost every engagement we have with clients involves this in some fashion. Obviously, we're hearing from our territory managers and so forth within the account management ecosystem in the UK, new customer opportunities where there is an opportunity to run a well-architected review, and that's great. But actually, the leads that come to us through our own marketing and sales efforts, we often start with well-architected as a first pass, particularly because there's no cost to the initial review. You're kind of using that then as an opportunity to sit in front of a stakeholder for 4 hours thereabouts, talking about their platform and building trust. And I think the trust aspect certainly for our clients in the UK, probably as important as in Latin America, getting to the point where people are like, yep, okay, you know what you're doing, you can probably help us, let's figure out how we work together. Being in front of people, I think, is the way to make that happen. We've talked a little bit about automating parts of the review. I think that might be good from an initial orientation perspective, but I don't think I would ever want to be in a position where we were completely removing the face-to-face aspect of this, because that's when you get to do the sales opportunity. So I think it's probably important to look at the different types of customers that we worked with in this program and the differences between how you would approach taking the review framework to those customers. In the smaller sort of medium business space, typically there's either a single workload or maybe sort of small integer number of them, and any work that we do with them is likely to be pretty high impact. A lot of these sorts of businesses, certainly in the UK, culturally like to do a lot of this stuff themselves, particularly the sort of startup ecosystem. There's a sort of hubris that you could knock together an S3 compatible thing in a weekend. Probably not. But there's this sort of viewpoint that people know the platform and know what they're doing. And so our sort of engagements with them, highlights that isn't necessarily the case, but if they're then willing to go on and engage us for a bigger piece of work, the impact that we have is pretty high. And so leading with well-architected as a sort of route into exploring opportunities is the right answer. With the larger businesses, the credit funding mechanism it's still a sweetener, but often that's not the sticking point. It's often not finances that will stop somebody from working with you at the larger end of the business. And so what we tend to find with those types of organizations is that we're using well-architected multiple times across multiple workloads as a way of benchmarking the abilities of different product teams who are all working with the AWS platform. So in a way, you might have a team that a larger business that has a sort of team of platform engineers who are responsible for the setting of the standards of how to use AWS. But we're seeing a trend towards business product teams doing more and more platform stuff themselves. And being a bit more self-service and not needing a dedicated DevOps engineer or a dedicated sysadmin to do the operational side of things. And so using well-architected as a way to understand how everybody is doing this across the business and set standards and use that to drive governance is something that we've managed to do in a couple of our larger engagements. So don't just think of it as a one-shot single workload thing. It is something that you can get repeated value of through a larger business as well. So one of the customers that we work with pretty successfully, this is one of the sort of SME business clients that I mentioned. They were people that I already knew through my network, or at least were one step removed, and so they were keen to have a review when it was offered. They do a referral marketing SaaS product, so it sort of works a bit like it's a little like a content management system for referral marketing. So the majority of their traffic is fairly highly cacheable things that embed in other e-commerce sites. So they'll have just had a very busy Friday, as you might imagine. When we ran the review for them, the main thing that we found, there were a number of kind of smaller things, but the actual root cause of most of the trouble they had was they were still on EC2 Classic. So for those of you who have never worked with EC2 Classic because you've worked on AWS within the last 6 years, EC2 Classic was the original EC2 hosting platform. No VPCs, no sort of network segregation. A lot of the products available to VPC were just not available on EC2 Classic. Some of the instance classes you couldn't buy on there, but it was still running. But we sort of identified that as the main thing for them to solve in the kind of medium to long term. That would unlock a lot of value for them. Their migration out to VPC was considered a lower priority than feature work, which is why they hadn't done it. As a team, they were, it wasn't that they didn't know VPC existed. This just wasn't the sort of work that was valuable to them. And so, classic type of opportunity for an external provider to come in and offer that expertise. After the review, we took the information that we'd found and designed a new target architecture for them, and we did the planning of that architecture and the migration work as something that was covered by the funding credits. So the actual planning of this was cost neutral to them, and using that plan, we were then able to quote what it would actually take to do the work to get them off there and get this done properly. And this is a sort of repeated pattern for us. We will use the remediation credits to fund what is essentially additional sales and pre-sales work. So we're going in with a review to start with, and then there's maybe 2 or 3 days of deeper dive kind of design work funded by the program that the customer ultimately then can go away with a plan, and that we then have a better understanding of what's likely to be involved, so that the types of contracts that the types of statements of work that we're pitching for ongoing work are a bit less risky because we've taken the time to dig into this as well. In order to do that, you're having to build a client, which means that they are going to be signing your contracts, signing your statements of work, and so they sort of get over that initial emotional hurdle of engaging with a third party that can sometimes be a problem. And by the time you hand over the design, talk them through it on a call or go in and see them again, they're already most of the way to committing to the sale. And actually the conversion rate we have for remediation work is pretty high. I was surprised when Dean said it was only 65-70% across the board. Like most of our deals come off. Most of our remediation work happens, and that's, I guess, because many of those sorts of remediation stories are about let's plan another thing, or let's do this concentrated bit of consultancy work to get you to a better understanding of what else we could do for you. So ultimately the migration took 6 weeks. We in this model, we actually augmented the client's team. So we dropped a couple of our guys into their organization and worked alongside their head of engineering, who was the guy who built the original platform, and so was best placed to support that. And we successfully got that across. And the benefits to them as a result, like they unlocked a lot of new instance types, so they were actually able to save some money because they were able to reduce the number of instances they were using, but use some of the more modern classes. No ALB in EC2 Classic, so they were able to unlock ALB as well, which meant they could go up to HTTP2, which was good for performance. They improved their security posture because everything being in a VPC was a much better position for them to be in. And we renumbered parts of their network and reassigned subnets and stuff so they had room to grow into, which they would otherwise not have had. Part of this work was about automating everything. So we used Terraform to automate the deployment of all these resources, so now it's possible for them to do a full DR recovery into new accounts, which wasn't previously a thing they could do. And the most quantitative improvement that we could find to talk about there was their platform performance increased by about 20%. So they in terms of the page time, the transaction time on the page. One of the things that we found difficult, I think, when we're talking about the success of well-architected is finding quantifiable things. For me, because this is such a, it's not a non-technical engagement, but it's a more consultatory engagement. Often it's difficult to find numbers to say we moved the needle here or we did this thing and this number got bigger. But in every case we've been able to find some improvement, whether that's improve the security posture, reduce the risk a little bit, reduce some spend, that sort of stuff. We got some feedback from Benjamin. The key word that I want you to take away from this is collaborative. I think the fact that you are sat in a room with a client, talking through what they've got, what their challenges are, is the main benefit of this. It allows you to have a more focused conversation, build that customer trust, get it to a better understanding of what they're doing. It really is a collaboration tool for us. And I think the thing to bear in mind, or the thing that we do that I think other people running well-architected reviews that we've seen perhaps haven't done, is to use it as a baseline jumping off point for that conversation. It's not a checklist. Although it appears in the tool as a list of checkboxes, really the value is in the talking about the thing. If all you're doing is trying to find boxes to tick, then that engagement is probably going to be fairly low quality. We have worked with a couple of clients who are really keen to do it in that sort of tick box way, perhaps because they are trying to prove something to an executive or are hoping to be able to sort of demonstrate a level of compliance as part of an RFP process or something of that nature. And really that doesn't work. I think you've got to find the place to have that conversation and talk more broadly than just what's in the framework. So talking about all of these things within the business context. What are you doing this year? What are you doing over the next 3 months? How's the team finding AWS in general? Asking really open sort of active listening style questions to draw the conversation out and to get to the real sort of heart of what's going on with their infrastructure. So we've done some, I think from was it April 2018 that we joined the program? We've done something between 150 and 200 reviews, I think, which is a really interesting perspective because you get to see a lot of things. And we've done these reviews across a number of different market sectors and verticals, a number of different business sizes and shapes. But there are some trends that emerge regardless of how sort of non-homogeneous the landscape that we've reviewed is. Typically, performance and availability are the things that the customers have got the strongest, which sort of makes sense because that, as an engineer, are the two things that you probably are thinking about the most. We've found very few people who are not really doing a decent job on performance and availability. Most people have understood auto-scaling. Most people have understood load balancing, clustering, those sorts of things. The place that we find concern most of the time is in the security side of things. It's often minimum viable. It's often, particularly with your sort of SME businesses, the security approach has sort of grown organically from the CTO setting up their first Amazon account and forgetting to put MFA on it. all the way to kind of, to very permissive IAM policies and those sorts of things. So a lot of the targeted remediations that we've done where the client is keen to use the credits for something but don't feel like they want to take on a longer engagement is often around tightening up some of those security policies. So reviewing what they're actually doing with CloudTrail and tuning down the IAM policies to make them a bit less permissive. Obviously, there are some exceptions to that. The fintech and healthcare businesses that we've worked with have done a reasonably good job of security because those are things that they have as compliance obligations. But for the most part, we find some things security related in every review we've done. Cost management, I think most people quite reasonably don't worry too much about cost early on. So the SME sort of story, most people are more concerned with iteration on their product than on reducing their spend. The exception there being people who've taken credits through something like the Activate program, where they've had 100 grand to use, and so they haven't really thought about spend at all. They hit the end of the duration or the availability of those credits, and all of a sudden their bill is like $20,000 and doesn't need to be. And so we're able to sort of get in and tune those and save them some money up front there as well. For larger teams, cost management is definitely an issue where, in a bigger business, we've worked with Expedia, for example, on their API services as part of their affiliate network, and they went from nothing in the cloud to having a 1 year target of getting 30% of their workloads into the cloud. And so you can imagine everyone was just spinning stuff up willy-nilly. The second year, everyone was a little bit more, that's quite expensive. We should think about that a little bit. So we've done some cost management for them as well. So the bigger businesses, cost management, we almost always find some wins. Most of those kind of organizations don't really understand reserved instance spend. And also, of course, savings plans, which are brand new as of a couple of weeks ago. Keeping up with that stuff is challenging. Operations really is operational excellence is the absolute weakest area everywhere that we've been. Nobody's writing documentation. No one has run books. There are very few diagrams around. The sort of on-call is sometimes run on sort of hope and prayer rather than any kind of process that's been rehearsed. There's very little in the way of game days or kind of chaos engineering or any of that kind of thing. So I think it's a great opportunity in that space from a consultancy perspective to improve matters in that area. But that's really, almost everywhere, that's pretty bad because it's invisible work. You don't see it. And so the value to the business isn't as obvious until something goes horribly wrong. And then all of a sudden it's a massive priority for about a week. Then it gets forgotten about again. So there's definitely opportunities in there. Most organizations, their general awareness of the platform is fairly low in as far as like the extent of the product range. And I think we're about to spend 3 days listening to 150 new product launches, so it's not really surprising that that's the case. But that's one of the conversations we often have is, why have you built that? There's this service over here that does that. And we're seeing dev teams increasingly keen to do things themselves, as I say. Like we used to be an engineering organization. We're becoming much more of a consultancy and teaching organization these days. And I think that's just the direction of the market. If you, as an organization, as a partner, are concentrating primarily on building things for customers, my view is that there is a limited lifetime of that, and you should probably be thinking about other things. So lessons learned in the review, they're all opportunities to build trust and make sales. Like that's what they're for. It's really not a purely technical engagement. And if your SA pros are very technically minded, you've got to be careful because they might just go in thinking about it as a technology engagement rather than an opportunity to sell things. Getting context before starting a review is important. Those questions about like what's your sort of 3-year plan from here? How much money have you got in the bank? Where's it come from? Like who are you hiring next? All those kind of contextual questions you can't answer, or you can't talk about the relative importance of some of your review findings unless you know the context of the business that they operate in. That's really important. We always start with like 30 minutes of that sort of conversation up front, and then a very generic, so how are you finding AWS? But with no other context, just to sort of tease out what they're currently struggling with. Don't treat the review as rigid. Like, don't just do the checkbox thing. Use it as a way of driving conversation. Ignore parts of it if you need. Like if you're sat in a sort of startup business and you're asking whether they've built a team to do cost management, they definitely haven't done that, and they're probably not going to need to for another 5 years. So be willing to go off the track a little bit. which again is harder with more technically minded SA Pro type individuals because they think in pattern and rigidity. You're going to sort of train them out of that. Be aware of the power dynamic. Like power dynamics are a thing that I find really interesting in general, but specifically in this type of relationship, you're walking into a room full of people who've built something and you're marking their homework, right? If you go in there with like, why have you done that? Oh, that's stupid. Like, any of that kind of attitude, it's not going to go well. The client and the people in the room are going to be more or less reticent to reveal information about what they've done to you. If you're going to go in there as though this is judgmental. And so as part of that kind of trust building exercise is to get to the point where they understand that you're not there to tell them off. We have one client that booked a review without knowing us at all, or without coming via the partner network or the account manager network. They thought that after the review, if we found too many critical issues, Amazon would turn off their infrastructure, right? Probably that's not going to happen, like for the most part, unless you're leaking keys everywhere or something. But they were, firmly of the opinion that might happen as an outcome. We didn't even think that was something that we would have to mitigate the thinking of early on until that happened. I mean, in fairness, we should have turned it off when we found, but that's a different story. But be genuinely curious. Like if you come across a sort of some kind of failing in how that infrastructure is designed. That failing exists for a reason, probably a historical reason, a contextual reason that you don't understand. Trying to understand that is what's going to get you to a better understanding of that client's business. And trust what people are telling you in that review. I mean, you're not going to log into the accounts and sort of look at it for the most part, but do bear in mind that because you're just asking questions and ticking boxes, people can lie to you. We did a review for one client who had a third-party an individual as a freelancer in doing some stuff for them, and he answered all of the questions aspirationally. It's like, we're looking at this, we are thinking about this, and they got no critical findings at all, surprisingly. In reality, there was about 30% of them that should have been critical findings because they hadn't actually got there yet, they just knew that they had to. So bear in mind that people might lie to you, and that's a power dynamic thing again, I think. The follow-up of the, writing the report up and so forth, the things that we learned is try and lay out what we might do in the remediation work during the review itself, because at that point it's the most relevant time for them to be thinking about those things. If you can have that conversation with them in the review, and also as in the case of one of my colleagues, write the statement of work on the side while you're having that conversation, so you can send it to them as you leave. That's most likely to get you to a commitment of remediation work. Time's really critical here. Like if you spend weeks writing a report, which we did in the first place, all the sort of trust and the goodwill and the kind of intention to fix things that you've dug out during that review just evaporates in that time. So like follow up immediately. Frame the recommendations in terms of what the business aims are. So that contextual question being really important is also about saying, you should do this because it enables this thing, right? If you're looking to double your revenue in the next 12 months, well, how are you going to do that? You can't scale this right now. So let's put some work here, because otherwise you're not going to be able to hit that business goal. Let's do the technology work as a subordination to the business goal rather than the other way around. And if you get radio silence, like, badger away, feel free. Clients don't mind being harassed, it turns out, and that's another emotional thing that our SA pros had to get over. So finally, impact to our business. We've seen more deal flow as a result of being part of the Well-Architected program, partly because we've been able to offer a really obvious kind of review engagement and have people just come and do that. It's allowed us to access an audience we already had but that wasn't buying from us. It's also got better attention from our territories managers and account managers who now know within London that we are well-architected partners doing pretty well in the program, and so they bring us opportunities to do that. We've increased our sales conversions, and I think in part that's because we're thinking much more about the value of the outcome to the client in terms of their business rather than the technology, which is where we were fixated a little bit earlier on. Average deal size has gone up. By having conversations about value, you can understand better what value the work has to the client rather than just thinking in terms of it's going to take me 5 days and so it's worth this much money. Pricing based on value is a real benefit that's come out of this as a sort of side effect, if you like. We've increased our specialization. We used to talk generically about being a DevOps consultancy. We're now an Amazon consulting partner, right? That's how we refer to ourselves. And I think that makes it a lot easier for people when they're browsing our website to try and figure out whether they want to hire us or something. If we say we are experts at architecture on the AWS cloud, people kind of understand that much better than we're a DevOps consultancy, because 10 years on, nobody still has an idea what DevOps actually is. We've increased our engagement with account managers as a result of being able to sort of stand out from the crowd a little bit. And the team are now way more hungry for getting their SA pros, because that means they can go out and run these reviews for themselves. That's me done. Thanks very much.
You're a rock star. Thank you, buddy. So thank you, John. It's great to hear these stories around partners again as you begin to think about where and how to apply well-architected to your business. A question that I would have for everyone as you're walking out today of this session is being able to answer the question, how are we measuring well-architected success in our business? You've heard from now several partners around how they're looking at it, how they're measuring it, what well-architected means to them. As you begin to kind of think about it in that context, we have a program that runs that we are encouraging all of our partners to share customer stories, quotes, use cases. Because the more we get these stories out there, the more customers hear about the impact that this has on the business, the more compelled they will be in engaging a partner to help them through this journey. This is a journey. One of the things that a lot of what you've heard today is, how are we helping our customers resolve these high-risk issues? Equally important is, as you begin to look at the journey, is from removing those high-risk issues, is how do we help our customers evolve, right? Because the point of well-architected is like you've heard, it's how are we helping these customers remove these high-risk issues, but how are we helping them evolve these workloads over time? And so this is about a journey. This isn't about one and done, go in, let's get this done and let's move out. This is a great way to stay connected to the customer longer. And hopefully as you'll see this week with our different launches, these are conversations you can begin having with your customers around how architecture is changing. Are these best practices yet? Maybe not. But as you begin to look at what does this mean, what is the impact that this has on my customer, to John's point, it's a business discussion. Right? You're no longer coming in and talking about, again, speeds and feeds. You're talking about how can we help you evolve? How can we help you disrupt maybe that industry that you're in right now? So these are a few quotes that we have from our partners around the impact that well-architected has on their business and how they're measuring success. These will roll through as we move on to our next section, which I'm going to invite all of the speakers to come up, have a chair, and it's going to give us an opportunity to ask some questions around their business, around the how they're measuring things. And then after that, we're going to invite one other guest speaker up to do one additional Q&A session around the program. So why don't I have John and everyone, if you will. Yeah, give these guys a hand for their presentations and their work.
It's like we're a 90s band. It's great. We have to stand up for the key change. So.
That's it. All right, so let's kick this session off with just maybe I've got Mahant in the back here that's got a microphone. You've heard a lot of partner stories. Any questions that really kind of stood out for you as you heard? Right here.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey from IPON, from France and the US. So thank you for your presentation. So as a summary, are you okay with the mic? Well, anyway. So as a summary, you all been successful with small, medium business and startups. Does one of you guys have success with enterprise account or strategic accounts? Because we do have this issue. We are doing good, very good with SMB and startups, but we are not doing very good with enterprise and strategic. And there are needs in strategic and enterprise. So if one of you has some advice for enterprise and strategic, I would listen to it very carefully.
Sure, so I'll answer that. We do have a story around enterprise. It was not in the slide deck. But there were, in enterprise, there could be any number of partners that are working on any portion of the business at any time, and you may not even know you're in there. And that was the case with this particular enterprise customer. Where they leaned in was the operation side, and I think that's to your point. Operationally, they recognized that they needed to set up a centers of excellence. They're going all in on cloud. They have this huge project, but they were concerned from an operation standpoint, what does that mean across the organization, right? And so they needed a really good framework in order to do that. And that's where all of their stakeholders leaned in. They had talent, they had people that you could train technically, they had other projects that were already going, but none of those projects had actually linked in and actually gave them a framework around what will this mean for operations, because it will change, and how will we then have a process to move forward and be successful. So.
And what is the AWS point of view on this? So you launch it, I think mainly for SMB, and we are doing very good in the US with, for example, the territory organization. Because territories, they don't have any ASAs, they don't have any process, so that's super cool for them. But when we are moving to strategic, or enterprise, and then strategic, and they have ASAs, and they have ProServe, the situation is very different. So I would like to understand your point of view, because your advice could be, don't go to strategic accounts, and don't do any work on strategic accounts, and it would be perhaps easier for us.
So no, that wouldn't be my recommendation. So first of all, as you said, yes. Well-Architected started actually with our strategic and our enterprise. Our SAs actually had these lists of questions that they used to start that conversation with their customers. And today they still do. This is, Well-Architected is part of the fabric, right? It's a piece of, the piece that as a SA or a TAM or a professional services individual engages with a customer, this is the framework that they use. What I can tell you is with the tool today that the SAs are encouraging customers to do more self-assessments. SAs are not gold on doing well-architected reviews, where at one point they were. Right, and so as they begin to kind of look at their time and where they spend it, we are starting to see where customers are engaging more. Our enterprise customers and strategic partners are engaging more with partners, because what happens is a review is done with a tool. It's different than if one of our partners is having a conversation with a customer. There's a lot more learning that goes into it, and when they are using an SA. Oftentimes after that is done, the SA can provide that guidance, but they can't go and they can't fix the problem. And so the customer is required to take that ownership to either improve those HRIs or those improvements, or it sits stale. And what I can tell you, which from a data standpoint, is that the majority of the time that those customers, and this is not just enterprise customers, but any customer that has access to an SA, the majority of the time, those high-risk issues go unresolved. There's good intention, But the fact is, they have the same challenges as everyone else, which is a lack of resources or a lack of expertise. So as we begin to look at like some of our partners, including our GSIs that just solely work with enterprise, they've integrated Well-Architected into their life cycle, into their QA process. And what we're seeing it most is actually on new implementations, not necessarily on existing workloads. So I know, John, I don't know if you want to add any more, because I know you work a lot with enterprise.
Yeah, I would say a lot, but we've worked, I think, enough with enterprise that we see the patterns.
Yeah.
I think to your point about sort of GSIs and the kind of, I guess, the account management of enterprises, I think the account managers and the SAs who work in those enterprise verticals, perhaps there's a gap between them knowing that they can come to a partner for that stuff.
Yeah.
So we've often had to do that education story. If we've been talking to an enterprise client about something else, and we then talk to their account manager, we mention Well-Architected, and often they've already tried to get the solutions architect from Amazon to go in and do it, and so that confuses the conversation with the client, because they're like, well, Amazon have done this for us already. Like, okay, but we have to do it if you want to get the credits so that we can do some paid remediation work that's part funded. And so that story is a little bit confused.
So let's clear that up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Because SAs will bring in partners. The question becomes, again, can a partner go in and help do remediation off of what one of our SAs has gone in and reviewed? Absolutely.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so and that's something that's new, right? I mean, it's new as of this year. We began playing with that idea, but in 2020, you know, if an SA brings a partner in to help with any sort of improvement or remediation, they will have access to that funding. I believe there's another question over here. Right here.
Hi, I'm Andy Frodsham from BJSS in the UK. So as a kind of follow-on question, we tend to find as well, performing well-architected reviews for SMEs or mid-sized organisations is very easy from a process point of view. It's a self-contained package of work. When you're working with large enterprises, it becomes a competitive landscape, and I think the client often gets confused around the well-architected review itself. So do we get ProServe to do it? I've got Capita doing this work over here. They want to do it. Whereas often we'll just say, well, we'll do one ourselves to kind of self-mark on this workload. How do you kind of see the way that well-architected is being kind of promoted around these kind of strategic big clients and kind of getting the partners involved? Because what I tend to see is there's a reluctance to bring in a separate consulting partner who may be working on one workload because it might upset somebody on this part of the program. And I just wonder if anyone else has seen that and how they've overcome it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll let the panel answer if you've seen that.
I don't think we've ever kind of come up against another well-architected partner. We're in the same regions, right? I don't think we've ever really bumped heads from a.
But it just tends to be the GSIs who...
Yes, the larger orgs. I think one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest unsolved problems in enterprise is procurement, right? And that sort of which partners can do what is sort of a procurement domain. It's also, if you're talking to someone who runs a platform team within an enterprise, they probably have headcount budgets, but they don't necessarily have pure consultancy budget. And they certainly have no way of communicating the idea that some of their costs will be offset against their cloud bill, which is somebody else's budget entirely over here. So the negotiation of like, yes, we can come and do this work, we'll charge you this much, we think there are this many workloads, we think there are therefore this many credits that we can get access to, plus these other funding things. Now let's go and explain that to an accountant in another time zone sometimes, or a different organization, about like how that means that this cloud spend is reduced, but it's offset. Like, it's madness. So I think procurement is probably the place to go. And I think coming back to the original question about enterprise, I think some of the sales conversations need to be not with the engineering managers, not with the people that we might have traditionally spoken to. It's got to be with like CISOs or CIOs or CFOs in some cases to make those things actually happen.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that as we begin to look at integrating well-architected in this program more into with our sales team and within ProServe, that's a new process for us as well, right? So again, one of the things that we're working on is how do we incent and encourage our SAs, our TAMs, from a support standpoint, our professional services. How do we actually make sure that if this is an enterprise, it is strategic, that they're looking at what resources are available that are well architected. And so one of the conversations that we've heard a lot is that we're now seeing customers come to us and say, I'm working with these partners, none of them are well architected. Can you please help get these people well architected? Right, so that's a really common theme. I can tell you that there was one GSI in 2019 early on that was authorized. Now there's 3, right? So it's customers and how we're engaging our customers. We're really trying to educate them that, again, these are resources available for you. This is a program available for you. Look at where that fits in. So hopefully you'll see more of that this year.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'd like to add actually one more thing. So in Korea, we actually, especially as of this year, we've started doing a lot of mass migration projects. Mass migration in our case is like 1,000+ physical servers. And a lot of times you also have to cooperate with, well, not have to, but we're working together with AWS ProServe. They come in first and they set up the project, and then we come in. And the challenge we're facing is actually that we oftentimes, more often than not completely synced up with the ProServes. And listening to how other partners are using the well-architected review today, actually I realized that we have to make our own professional SAs use the program much more for enterprise customers as well. At the moment, we limited it to startups and SMBs, as I mentioned before, but actually it makes a lot of sense, I realize now, to do it for key accounts or enterprise customers as well.
Yeah, I was surprised, I think, to learn that you were such a large organization, but with 2 people doing well architected. I was like, that bowled me over, surprised.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you.
Hi, Dan Ferguson, SA Pro from Epon Technologies. How do you guys take successful reviews and the additional material from those reviews, and with your team of SA Pros and salespeople, convert that into a proactive campaign for acquiring more reviews? I know, Franco, you touched on word of mouth between other companies talking to each other, but is there any proactive process for taking successful reviews and turning that into more reviews with additional clients or the same clients with additional teams and different workloads? Is there any process that you guys find works?
Yes, well, the referral program that I told was a really amazing tool for us. We try to expand the network on well-architected. We invest a lot on the importance of the well-architected and the competitive advantage of a tech company of being well-architected or not. We try to ensure that the first conversation is, hey, you are in the well-architected program? No. And why not? Oh, I don't know what that is. But look, there is. You can have a competitive advantage being well-architected because you are ensuring your customers that you are pretty much ready to take in their workloads. We invest a lot in marketing. We have webinars on each pillar. We have success cases, interviews, videos. We try to ensure that the well-architected gets to the decision makers through the technical, through business, and also, as anyone told here, it is a business conversation. So we try to ensure that those campaigns focus on, hey, you have a business opportunity here, not a technical improvement. You can change the way you made your business. We recently before coming to this event, we came from Colombia, and we had our first event. We made a breakfast and present the program. And we had, the other day, we had 2 reviews committed from one day to another. And why is that? Because we are selling that let me make a review of you and see how you are and see where is the position that you are and how can I help you to make your business great. Our first question is, which are your objectives, your business objectives? Now, how do you build them? And please invite a business guy into the review. So I guess there are a lot of things to do. B2B is a really amazing world. I love it. And I think this program gave us the opportunity to have a focused marketing on, hey, if you are well architected, you will have a competitive advantage among others. And that's started our network of talking about, hey, yeah, it's true.
I would say what we see predominantly is where our partners are using this, again, as John also mentioned, as just a business conversation, right? And beginning to look at and leverage that information across not just, and Tia, I think you talked about it too, just not just with one group, but across the organization, right? So it becomes really, and enterprises are looking at this as governance. How can I make sure that what it is that we're doing, we're governing the quality of what it is that we have running in production. So I think it's, you know, if you begin to think about it from a sales standpoint, it's a great platform, a great mechanism to use as, you know, you have your regular cadences with your customers based on those different workloads. If you're an MSP, it gives you an opportunity to do it as often as you can. If you're not an MSP, you know, the things that we see is where consulting partners are actually now integrating it in into their contracts, where they'll come back every 6 months to have a conversation to talk about what's changed, what's evolved. So those would be some ideas.
Hello, my name is Fernando from the UK. As we are all well-architected partners, I'm trying to understand if there is a roadmap on improving the way that we need to submit the cases and the remediation reviews that we do every month. For us, to be honest, it's a pain in the back, just having to do that through like 2 to 3 emails every month or every quarter or every, yeah. Yes.
So from a roadmap standpoint, in 2020, that's one of the things we've heard loud and clear, is there's too much heavy lifting on reporting. In 2020, once we roll this out, you will be receiving a new documentation that will talk about what that and how that process has changed. But for everyone here, you will no longer be needing to report reviews. We have visibility into those reviews and those high-risk issues. The program is changing and evolving, and so you'll see a much larger focus on removing high-risk issues. You'll see a much greater focus on production workloads. And so from an overall roadmap standpoint, there's several other things that we are doing from a tooling standpoint that I'm happy to kind of, if we can hold that maybe question till we have our next guest here, we can maybe divulge some of that information on what the roadmap looks like, knowing that everyone here is under NDA.
Is Maria here today? Is Maria here today?
Maria is not here today, unfortunately.
So she's been overworked replying to emails, right?
Maria, unfortunately, based on the scale of the program, yeah, the number of emails that we receive on well-architected reviews is heavy. So thank you for your question. Did I answer that? You're welcome. Other questions?
Hello, Nico speaking from Germany, T-Systems. You already talked a little bit about how you want to automate the well-architected review question to AWS. Will this become maybe something that we don't need to develop and that is developed by AWS, maybe let's say in config or somewhere, that we can say, okay, we just click here, well-architected rule set, enable it, and then we can govern the accounts to find these, open points, high-risk issues.
So remember, the well-architected review is subjective, first of all, right? And how it's been designed, yes, you can automate some of the well-architected review. We'll again leave that question open for our next speaker. But yes, we've heard that from our customers and our partners that you would like to see more automation for self-discovery. Good question.
Hi, it's Pierre from Synthesis in Johannesburg.
Yes.
It's more of a request rather than a question.
Okay.
I'm just concerned about joiners and leavers in terms of training and understanding well-architected. Obviously, we've had an initial training boot camp, a year's passed, and the staff change. How do we give people a refresh on training,
Great
keep them
question.
up to date with this? And the request is really, can we do this at summits in country and have more boot camps?
Fantastic. I love that request. Thank you for that. First and foremost, we spent a lot of time in 2019 enabling our partner solution architects, for our partner solution architects to actually deliver this training within the GEO. So our goal is that you don't have to wait for us to do this. And so from the standpoint of summits, the only challenge that we've had with that thought, and love to get your opinions here, is that usually that boot camp is a full day boot camp, right? And it takes away from other things that are happening within the summit that we really feel is probably valuable to participate in. So we have considered maybe doing this the day before or the day after summits. So would that work for people? Is enablement, raise of hands enablement? Okay, great. Awesome, thank you.
So we train our own team. We do it internally. So I think that the original boot camp that Dean ran in London in 2018, a couple of us went along to, 3 maybe. And since then we've taught that ourselves. I think it's good to have people at the sort of solutions architect pro level of our business given the responsibility to train people, because that skill set is important to practice as well. In addition, I think there are ways in which we run a well-architected review based on our learnings that Dean and the partner solutions architect team aren't going to teach because they're our kind of particular flavor on it. And so what you actually get is an opportunity to learn how we do a review. And actually the first part of that doesn't need to be a full day. Like, we will take people who want to be involved in this process along with us to a review so you can see it happen. And then the second time they do that, we'll maybe give them a pillar or 2 to run themselves. And then there's a sort of Q&A feedback loop around that. So I don't think it's, if you've got people already running these reviews successfully, I don't think you should need to lean on the Amazon ecosystem to train those people. You can do it yourself, and then you can do it whenever you need to.
Yeah, the other thing that we really want to emphasize this year is we've focused so much on that SA Pro Cert individual within the company. I feel like we over-indexed on that a little bit, right? Yeah, and I think we need to, and I think, again, I know we need to recorrect that based on, it's just as important for your DBAs to understand well-architected as it is your developers, right? And so as you begin to think about operations teams, as you begin to think about other people in the organization that are touching the workload, we want to make sure that they have this framework, that they leverage this framework to do so. So training and enablement is hugely important. So I've got one more question. I know Ryan here has been patiently. Okay. Oh, awesome.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Steve Fisk from CBTS, and this pretty much piggybacks off of what we're talking about now. And Tia, you had mentioned that the game changer for you was sitting in through a boot camp and understanding it from a business perspective to be able to sell this to your prospective clients. So my first question is, did you have your SA before going into boot camp to do this? Because that's pretty much a requirement, correct?
Did. Myself, I have the associate, right? Okay. There was an exception made because we were having a really hard time getting it into our practice, right, to go to the boot camp. So I was able to participate with other people we were trying to train from our team. I think it was good for the SAs who already had done the boot camp to kind of see the boot camp again for a second time around. To your point, John, we do internally train, so They can see the Bellflare flavor on top of what it is. But I think it's equally important at the same time to kind of have a refresh, because there's some insights that the team, the AWS team will then integrate into that next training that you maybe didn't see the time before. And maybe your first time around, you caught about 80% of what was told. And if you go a second time, you catch that other 20% that will strengthen your position, right? From a technical standpoint. From a business standpoint, it was very clear to me being in the room, although we were architecting and we were looking around a use case. And so from that use case, I was able to put my business hat on and say, how would I have approached this customer if this customer was sitting in front of me? And then I'm seeing how we were integrating the different pillars into the solutioning. At the same time, I was thinking, what are those business questions off of those pillars that I could really command and own from an operation standpoint? And that's where I really saw the opportunity for us.
And that's what I'm kind of getting at from, I've seen a lot of enablement around the essays and the technical side of things. And for those of us, namely myself, that are not technical at all and have a lot of issues with that, but are on the sales side of things and are the ones that are going to be the initial point of contact for our clients, just the ability to sit in through almost a sales boot camp or a business focused boot camp to be able to understand what questions to ask, how to kind of dig, how to kind of navigate the waters of the 5 pillars through a business perspective. Is that something that potentially is coming in 2020? And maybe that's another segue to our secret guest coming up here. But.
So yes, so sales training, sales enablement is coming in 2020. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. And I did have one of the 100 of these. How many essays do you have that did all 100 of these?
Well, that was 2.
2 people did 100 over the last year.
So what we had to do was kind of treat it like a manufacturing kind of line, if you will.
Do you let them sleep?
And so that was
sleep till it's
that was their main focus, right? But at the
Okay.
same time, they're bringing on the next generation of people with them that are sitting in these reviews. They're not running them, but it's going to take a village because the tool time's out, so you got to have somebody managing that.
Yeah,
sometimes you got to take notes right at the same time because you want that essay to be fully engaged in the room and having a conversation, mentoring, not finagling and doing all these extra things. So it's more than one person that's in there, but 2 essays that had the pro cert that were really driving the mentorship, and then we had other people that were driving the other portions that were more administrative or troubleshooting or things of that nature.
Awesome. I'd love to talk to you after this about that. Just
So
fantastic.
We're gonna go one more question, and then what we're gonna do is break for a bite to eat. We're gonna still be around, so if you would like to ask further questions, we're happy to kind of dive a little bit deeper. So Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your lessons learned. It really helps us figure out how to operationalize this. I've heard a few different ways of presenting the well-architected reviews to clients through statement of works. I think you shared you do the interview for free and then you present a statement of work. I've also heard doing a $5,000 statement of work and lumping in that interview in that. I've heard doing a $15,000 statement of work that includes a lot more remediation and sets the value higher. What have you guys experimented with, and what have you seen work well and not work well with those different approaches?
Yeah, we try to, sometimes to build a review. Sometimes it worked, but sometimes, we need a moment to sell, and we want to take advantage of the time too. So I don't want to go to the company and try the review and then come back again and say, okay, let's do the review. I want to have a more agile engagement of the client. Our region is pretty huge, so we need to take the time on that. But yeah, we will have some success cases on enterprises where we build the review. We work with ProServe too on AWS, where they develop, for instance, a cloud adoption framework to the whole company, and we engage some of the pieces of the process with paid reviews and made some remediations. But the fact is that the $5,000 credit is a part of the return of the investment on the first statement of work. It works a lot, really works. So for our region, it's too much money, and they really value that. But the fact is, I have all those tools to get the first 3 months where I can show them that having a technical partner it's really awesome. It's not pretty common in my region to have those kind of companies. So we tried a lot of things before the program, and I think this was the best decision we made. Yeah, to have a lot of free hours for them, to have the time for them, and when people see that you're investing in them, most of the time they value the time you took to get to them. That was our best decision, commercially talking, because they value a lot of that, and I think was the best conversion rate we get with that.
So we've tried everything, like literally every combination of things you'd imagine. I think after the boot camp, I think our original assumption was to contract the client for a $5,000 statement of work and going off the back of that. That I don't think is the right approach. Like I think we've ruled that out, in part because you're essentially saying, hey clients, give us some money for we don't know what yet, right, before you walk in the room. And so you haven't built the trust, you're sending contracts, and like, you know, our master service agreement is like 19 pages. So before you've had any real interaction with the client other than yeah, we can do a review for you, you're saying, hey, commit to this massive bit of paperwork and everything else, and there's a sort of anxiety, like what are we being tricked into? Like there's that real kind of emotional aversion to it. So we skip all that. Unless a client needs us to sign an NDA before they can disclose certain details to us, then we only really do the paperwork after the first engagement or after the review. We, in some cases, based on the conversation, we'll find out whether the client actually has money to spend on solving the problem, or whether they just are in it for the credits, which obviously a percentage of clients are. And so in that case, we just sort of feel out, well, okay, these are the things we can do in that $5,000, let's just sign off on that, and we do a lot of work fixed price rather than time and materials these days, because it allows us to value price. And if the value to that client is the $5,000, then we just see what we can fit in there. In some cases, those the conversation on the day leads into that sort of bigger discovery exercise where you've got an understanding that the client has more money to spend or problems that are valuable to them, and you've, through that sales process, uncovered that they are willing to, they would rather have the solution than the money, which is where you're trying to get to. And so we will sign off on a bigger piece of work, and the credits are a drop in that, and you're just like, you know what, it's a formality essentially getting the credit funding. And in some cases, it's a support subscription, and it pays towards that. So you can experiment with it, but I would say if you're signing paperwork or writing statements of work before you understand what the client values, then you're going to have a bad time anyway. And going in up front with a $5,000 statement of work before you've had a conversation about anything, including value, is probably going to fail more often than it succeeds.
All right. Well, thank you again very, very much for answering these questions. We appreciate it.